everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
We're excited to have this webinar today. We've got a great turnout, so it should be a good conversation. I see some friendly faces who I know. Hi, guys.
Hi, Jane.
Hi.
So during the teaching part, you can keep yourselves on mute, and then we are going to have a chance to do questions and answers because this is a hot topic for a lot of us leaders in business. So I'm sure there might be some questions that we'll get to as well. So we'll let everybody come on in for a few minutes and then I'll start with my intro. Jeannie, how are things out in your world?
So far so good. It's Monday, trucks, payroll, all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
How about you, Kane? How's your world today?
Good. Good. I'm excited. We've got this, and then I'm going to be interviewed for a podcast on female leaders, right? Kind of like our journey as women in business. And I'm excited about doing that this afternoon as well. I've never been interviewed before about my story. So it'll be a good opportunity for me to sit on the opposite side of things.
Right. Well, will we get to watch it at some point, maybe?
Yeah, I'm sure the company will make it public. It's a podcast, it's a series. So I'll let you know when it comes out.
Okay, please do.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to give another minute here. We had a lot of folks sign up, so I'm sure it's going to take a minute for folks to get in. Okay, I am going to get started. Folks that come in a little bit late, they'll just have to jump in. We have Violine with us. She's from our organization. She's going to be helping to get people moved in and all the rest on the administrative side of the webinar. So she'll just continue to work on that for us. All right, so welcome everybody. I don't know what time zones you are all in, but I'm in Tucson, so for me it's still morning. And I want to welcome you to the podcast. Welcome you to the webinar. And what we're going to be talking about today is how to coach your employees for top performance. So I want to give a little bit of background regarding this topic before we get started as folks, are coming in. I joined Assured Strategy around 2015, 2016 and became a coach with the leadership area of our organization because my background was as a therapist. And then I got into the business side of the mental health industry. And what I found is that working with our staff, working with our peers, working with other leaders around us, there was a lot of coaching and a lot of like therapeutic tools that we ended up using in the context of being a leader. And so as I work with Assured Strategy and the clients that we have, I have found that there's a really beautiful marriage between coaching employees. And what we have found is that a lot of leaders don't really understand what it means to actually be a coach. So we're going to talk about what that means.
This is Melissa.
If you guys can put yourselves on mute if you don't mind when you come in. Thank you, Melissa. So we're going to, talk about what it means to be a coach and how do you actually sit down and have a coaching conversation. There's a lot of language around, being a coach or what it means to coach employees. So we're going to get into some of those specifics and some tools of that today. Any of the tools that I talk about, they are available after this webinar. You can email us. We'll give our email at the end, info@assuredstrategy.com, and get all of the tools. So I am going to reference some things verbally that we may not necessarily have a slide for. So you're welcome to have any of those. And then we're also recording this webinar and it will be available on YouTube. We'll also be letting all of you know where that link will be so that you can share it with your colleagues or your staff or anyone that you might be coaching or mentoring in the business environment, as well as watch it again for yourself. Okay. So any primary questions before we get started? All right, sounds good. Let's get going. So I'm going to go through our deck here. All right, so let me know when you're seeing my screen here. We should be up and running. All right, so this is going to be the webinar on how to coach your employees for top performance. And again, I'm Kane Petkovich with Assured Strategy. So I want you all to take a moment and try to read this on the left side here. And I'm going to give you about 30 seconds and let's see if you can read what it says.
This message serves to prove.
Are we supposed to read it to you or just say we can read it?
If we've got someone reading, that's even better. So
I'm sorry.
whoever was going, no, go right ahead. Can you do it out loud?
Certainly. I thought I was on mute. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I love it. No, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, they
So-
have these on Facebook so we can read them. Yeah.
So this message serves to prove how our minds can do amazing things, impressive things. In the beginning, it was hard, but now on this line, your mind is reading it automatically without even thinking about it. Be proud. Only certain people can.
Good job. That's great.
I'm going to go on mute now. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. So this is about pattern recognition. Our brains are fundamentally lazy. We want to be able to go as fast as possible through information and capture what we feel is the important thing. And so our brain looks for patterns so that we don't have to use a lot of extra energy to figure things out. So when we look at what this is over here on the left side, we are quote unquote reading it. Okay, we are making these letters and numbers fit into a paradigm, fit into some kind of matrix in our brain that makes sense. So now I want someone to read what this actually says. Do I have a volunteer?
7H15M3554G3. Is that what you
Correct.
mean?
Yes, exactly, exactly. That's what this actually says. But our brain wants to make it as easy as possible to understand through pattern recognition. So when we are looking at pattern recognition, we have to understand that this is what allows us to have the ability to process a lot of information and weed out what doesn't fit. And so fundamentally, we spend the majority of our actions, our thinking, our feeling, our behaving is through the lens of pattern, okay? So when we are looking at coaching, the topic of coaching, we have to understand that often we are going to be working with individuals to help give them awareness, conscious awareness of their patterns because they can't see it. All right. So we can see sometimes things about others that they can't see within themselves because they are operating from a place of pattern. So when we look at pattern behaviorally, one of the tools that we use at Assured Strategy, and it's commonly used in a variety of different areas, is the DISC. And DISC is a behavioral assessment that looks at our behavior patterns in 4 different areas. Okay. The D is decisive. How do we tend to go about problem solving when it's a new problem? Do we slow our decision making down and try to get more information so that we make a good decision, a right decision? Or are we a high risk taker and we think action is better than no action? So let me just do something and I'll pivot and change my decision if I need to later. Okay. I is interactive. It's our pattern of interaction. How talkative, communicative, sociable am I naturally? Some people are very outgoing and talkative, right? Others like to sit back more and hold back a bit more socially and communicate like a little bit less in terms of just being able to just, want to jump in initially and start talking with strangers or in a meeting or something, okay? That's the interactive dimension of behavior. And then we have S. S is stabilizing. This is the pace of the environment that we prefer to have. Some people want a really fast, dynamic, quickly changing world. It's fun for them. They enjoy it. Okay. Other people like to have a slower, steadier pace that has some routine, some consistency, some reliability to their world. And so they like a slower paced environment. Okay. Change for them is actually stressful, right? Whereas for someone else who's a lower S, who really likes a lot of change and variety, it's energizing for them. And then we have C, which is cautious. This is our pattern of behaving regarding how much detail and precision do we want? Are we a high analyzer? Do we like to have information and facts and data? Do we like to check things, off the box? Do we like to get something right? Okay. Do we have a high expectation of quality for ourselves as well as for other people? Do we like to follow the rules? Okay. Those are higher C's. Low C's behaviorally, rules are like, if it makes sense, I'll follow it. But if it doesn't make sense, there's sort of a lot of gray area. Just give me the high level facts. Don't give me too much detail unless I really want to know it. Or things like, don't give me too much analysis. Just, let me figure out how much analysis and how much quality I'm looking for. So, people have different areas of behaving. And so when we do profiles like DISC, and there's other behavior profiles out there, right? DISC is not the only one. It's helping us in coaching to be able to give people awareness and consciousness of their go-to patterns. And we have two different types of go-to patterns. Patterns where we are comfortable and relaxed in that environment and our behaviors are just natural. We're not even thinking about it. Versus adaptive. How do we act when eyes are on us? Expectations are on us. We are in a new environment and we're not sure if our normal behavior pattern is what's called for or not. So we have like a go-to shift that we make behaviorally in different types of situations. And because people are so adaptable, right? Human beings are adaptable. We can put ourselves in a variety of different environments and be successful. But we often have these patterns that have been developed over time, and they show up in the workplace because as human beings, we are who we are, right? Who I am in one environment is going to be my same personality. I might adapt my behaviors a bit here and there, but I'm fundamentally not going to go from being, a really high D and then behave as a very low D. I'm going to have a range of behavior patterns, but fundamentally, I am who I am. Okay. So when we're looking at observing other people, what you're looking for when you are working with your staff or, your peers or other leaders around you, even family members, a lot of this applies obviously in our personal lives as well. What we're looking for is for high Ds where if you don't have their result of a profile, you have to sort of guess what they might show up as in terms of, coaching them and working with them. High Ds are going to be focused on results. They're driving for action. Some action is better than no action. Okay. So they are sort of our innovators. They are our pushers. They are high risk takers. They are very direct, right? So they let you know exactly what they think and feel. They have very high expectations in terms of stretch goals because for them, they like the challenge. The challenge is fun. Okay. Competition is fun. Whereas for other folks, not so much. Okay. Our eyes behaviorally, you're going to notice that they're very talkative, right? They like to interact socially. They're very friendly and outgoing. They'll start meetings where they want to ask you, how are you doing? What's going on in your personal life? How was the weekend, right? And so you're going to notice that there's a high level of verbal interaction and verbal relationship building with that type of person on your team. Your high S's, they are going to be more slow and steady. They are warm when they meet strangers and they open up more fully as they get to know you. Whereas my high I's are going to be, usually very friendly up front and, be very open and talkative. My high S's are loyal, dependable, reliable. They have a lot of longevity. They like patterns. So they don't like conflict typically. So you'll notice that if someone's sort of the peacemaker on your team, that might be a high S feature. Or if there's a crisis or a really intense situation, they bring a calmness to the space. Those are also going to be some of that high S energy. My C's, you're going to notice that they have some healthy skepticism. right? They want to understand your logic. How did you get to your perspective? What was the facts behind that? So they can sometimes ask some questions that come across sometimes as confrontational. It's really not confrontation at all. It's just trying to figure out, why do you think what you think? What's the logic? They want to make sure they didn't miss something because they're detail focused, they're precision and accurate and quality focused. Okay, so they have a lot of logic. Sometimes they have poker faces. It's hard to read them emotionally. Right. So we are a combination of all of these different types of aspects of behavior. And so when we're working with our staff and we're coaching them, all of these different types of behavior patterns have strengths and they also have weaknesses. And so in the coaching environment, you're wanting to maximize the strength of different types of profiles and the integration of these 4 areas within each of us. And you're also trying to sometimes give visibility to where they have a weakness. So we'll talk about some of those weaknesses in a moment. Now, high Ds, they communicate directly. They don't mince words. So sometimes they hurt people's feelings because they are so direct. And someone else who's maybe a lower D might say, oh my gosh, I can't believe that person said it like that. Right? That was like really perceived as aggressive or perceived as very assertive, right? It's really not that they're trying to be aggressive. It's that they're just trying to be very, like, black and white. It's just, it is what it is. So they're very clear and to the point. Okay. They don't want a lot of chit chat socially starting meetings because they want to get to the agenda. Like, let's get action. What are we going to do from this meeting? If the talking is going along too much and they don't feel that there's results from the conversation, they might jump in and say, hey, let's get back to the agenda. They want to bring like closure to the meeting topic and action. What can we expect as the result of the conversation? So my high Ds are going to be very action focused and direct and to the point. Now my I's, because they like to talk and interact, sometimes we have to rein them back in socially. They get off topic in meetings or in communication. So sometimes we have to say, I wish we had time to discuss all of this, but we really need to get back, to the purpose of the meeting. Or we might say to our high I's, I'd love to hear about what happened on your vacation, but let's first get the agenda, finished, and then let's spend time at the end, connecting. Or sometimes in a sales opportunity with someone, and I know that they're a talkative type of person that I'm trying to potentially sell to, I might need to schedule more time for that meeting because they do need that social connection. Whereas my high D, if I'm having a meeting with them in a sales capacity, they might not need the full time because they're very, to the point, and they don't want to have a lot of chit chat until maybe the end of that meeting, when if they're higher on that interactive side, they do want to connect socially, right? Because again, we're not one dimensional, we're the integration of these different aspects of patterns. Now my S's, as I mentioned, because they don't like a lot of conflict, sometimes they will agree, and they will sometimes, like take on work that maybe they should say no to, or they should push back on, or they should have, different boundaries. But because they're team players, they authentically want to be helpful, and they do like that harmony. Sometimes they will take on stuff that maybe they really shouldn't, right? Because they are so team focused and helpful focused individuals. And because they don't like a lot of conflict, in their mind, it might be unnecessary conflict. Sometimes they can have that artificial harmony where they don't like to rock the boat. They do want to keep the peace. And so sometimes they think things or disagree or have a different perspective, but they might not always come out and share that because they want to have, that sense of camaraderie. It's really important to them. So that could be a blind spot. And my C's, they want to have information. So for their communication, send them information in advance. Tell them, I will provide this PowerPoint, for example, to you, or I will send you what we discussed in writing, or before a meeting is even better, right? This is what we're going to discuss. They want to come prepared. They want to be able to have an opinion based upon their own knowledge and research and information. So throwing things at them last minute and asking them what they think about something might create some anxiety and stress for them. So they're going to want time to read things through. They're going to be the types of people who do find those errors, you know, in different types of material. There are detail focused individuals. So when you talk to them, they might need more time to think about things. And because they are very direct and factual, you may need with them to pull out more information. So sometimes in a meeting with my high Cs and I'm coaching them maybe privately, I'll ask them that second and that third and that fourth follow-up question, because they're only going to give you the exact answer that you asked for. And even though they have a lot more information behind the scenes in their mind, you might have to pull it a bit out of them. So from a communication perspective, depending upon our style and our behavior pattern, we're going to show up a certain way. And as leaders, if we're coaching our employees and working, you know, with our peers, we have to be able to understand that not everyone communicates the way we do or behaves the way we do. And if we can get more focused in learning what it looks like for other people, then we can be more tactical in how we coach them or how we give them feedback on blind spots, or how we can appreciate the different strengths that these different profiles have, right? And use them more effectively in our team dynamic. Okay. So from the perspective of conversation, you know, and these are all handouts that we have available to you. My high Ds are going to be fast, get to the point. They might interrupt and interject. Okay. They'll give you, you know, very, very concrete, fast information because they want to move quickly. Right. My Is, very talkative with animation, using their hands. Right. I mean, I'm sure you guys can guess that I'm a higher I. So they come with, you know, like vocal fluctuations, and their tone is varied, right? Sometimes they're very positive or bubbly, you know, like a faster paced conversation. And my S's, slower paced. Okay, slower paced. I need to give them time to get to know me better. I want to be able to make them feel comfortable. Okay, so they're going to be warm again, but it's a slower pace type conversation. And my C's, sometimes they can have, you know, good poker faces, or I can't read them sometimes emotionally, because they are perceived from a conversation style as a bit more kind of closed at times. And they're going to want a slower pace as well. They don't want to be rushed, and they're going to be very, you know, business, no nonsense. So they might also have a little bit more of a flat vocal tone. Okay. So depending upon my type of individual in front of me, I can listen for how they talk, how they present themselves verbally, and I can get an idea of what type of profile they might be so that I can be successful in communicating with them and coaching them. So when we're looking at like coaching, we want to say to folks, we want to maximize our strengths and we want to bring awareness of our potential blind spots. So there's a model for self-awareness called the Johari window, and it was created by two psychologists, John and Harry, and they wanted both credit, so they combined the name Johari as a combo of John and Harry. And this is their philosophy or their model on self-awareness. When I'm coaching someone, I'm trying to get things into the open arena. Okay, the open arena is things that I know about myself and you know them too. Okay, so if I'm working with someone, the more that we can put out on the table, so to speak, and have in the open arena, the more that we can talk openly about things, because they know it and I know it too. However, oftentimes in business or in relationships, our employees are walking around with masks, right? Because they're protecting their ego. They don't want to be judged. They want to, you know, come across as looking professional or competent. So they have a mask. It's things that they know about themselves, but we don't know it. Okay. So if we're thinking about it about ourselves, I know it, you don't know it, right? So when we have a mask, it's more about self-protection and managing that ego state of how people perceive us. We don't want to be judged, okay? Blind spots. Blind spots are things that someone does not know about themselves, right? But we can see it. So oftentimes when we're working with different types of individuals, because they are pattern-based, right? They're just operating based upon their behavior patterns. They don't know what they don't know. They can't see it. But if I'm working with them or I'm coaching them or you're coaching your employees, you might see things about how they show up on the team or in meetings or, just as being a part of the community, a part of the company culture. So they don't have it as awareness. It's their blind spot. And what we're trying to do is to work on getting this arena opened up. So the bottom right is the unknown. This is, I don't know and you don't know. It's the future potential. And if we are coaching individuals and we're working with them and we're giving them feedback and we're trying to be open and be honest about the blind spots we see in order to improve their productivity or improve how they show up culturally within our organizations, then I have to put those blind spot information into the open arena. And masks, they need to let down their masks, let down their guard, open up about those weaknesses, show some vulnerability and some self-reflection around things and be willing to talk about it, put it out into the open arena so that we can actually use it to help them become the best that they can be in the environment that we have them in. The more we have in the open arena, the more we have potential for the unknown. So teams that are really, open and active in sharing and giving feedback, and it's not seen as judgment, then we have the ability to really get more effective with each other because the communication BS, like all the politics of blind spots and masks, sort of goes down, okay? And so the reason that we use profiles is because it allows people's profile strengths and weaknesses to be out there black and white in a report and in a result of an index where it's not my judgment of them. Okay, they can't say, oh, that's just how Kane thinks about me, right? Or this is just how so-and-so, thinks about me. It's about them, like they're wrong, I'm fine. When we have an actual report of a profile, then we have something to work with. They can be open and honest about the results in that profile, and we can have more open and authentic conversations about how we see those blind spots that's in that profile that maybe they're not aware of. Okay, so we normalize the feedback because we don't want this to come from a place of judgment. And we'll talk about that later in today's conversation. We don't want to have information and sharing and coaching from a place of judgment, but from a place of support and empowerment that we believe in the person that we're working with, right? Okay, it's important as a leader that we understand what hats we wear and be more intentional in wearing them. Because we as leaders can go by our habits and our patterns too. And we can act without really understanding, why we're doing what we do in our different interactions throughout the day and with the different meetings or people that we're talking to, okay? So I'm gonna go through some different hats that leaders wear. And as we move the titles over to the right of the screen, as we go through these titles, the more that we can get into the right side of these titles, the greater the lasting impact on the employee, which in this diagram is called the talent, right? Because it's their own self-awareness, it's their own insight. So let's go through these titles. If I have a directing hat on as a leader, it means I am telling you what to do. I am directing you. I am being very black and white and giving you very black and white feedback. Like, I need you to do this. I want this to be done. Okay. Sometimes as a leader, we need to direct. That's part of our job. So if we have the directing hat on, we are driving that agenda. All right. So the agenda that we have on the left side of this bottom triangle is like, we are really high on the agenda. The employee in front of us does not have a lot of that agenda owned. So the lasting impact on them is going to be smaller. Okay. As we go to the right now, we are getting into advising. The advising hat is when we are saying to our employees, this is what I would do based upon my experience, but ultimately you can decide for yourself, right? I'm giving my advice, but I'm not directing. So advising is sort of, potentially influencing them, leading them towards something that we might do. But at the end of the day, we're just giving advice and they can make that decision for themselves. So the lasting impact is getting a little bit more for them, but we're pretty much still driving that agenda. Now we have the teaching hat as a leader. If we have the teaching hat on, then we are, relaying a concept, helping them understand a certain type of something, right? Maybe it's teaching a task, or maybe it's teaching an idea. So the teaching hat is where we are still conveying information, but it's more of a give and take in that agenda. So that's why it's in the middle, right? The talent owns part of that agenda, and we own part of that too. Now we're getting over to the right. It's more mentoring. The mentoring hat is when we've taken someone underneath our wing, and we are really investing in them. We are investing in their journey, their career journey maybe, or their life journey. There's a lot of ways in which we mentor, in our world. And it's not just in the business context, but, obviously this is a business webinar, but these types of ideas can be applied in a variety of settings, obviously. So the mentoring hat is when we are taking someone underneath our wing and we are really investing in their journey. And that agenda grows larger for the talent and goes smaller for us, the leader, because this is really, what they want in their life. And we are helping them and being a part of that journey to some capacity. And so the lasting impact on them is going to be stronger. Okay. Now, coaching. This is what this webinar is about, coaching. The coaching hat is the far off hat on the right that we sometimes need to wear as a leader, which is we're not driving the agenda. The talent in front of us, the employee in front of us is driving that agenda because we are asking questions. So we're going to talk about coaching in terms of how to ask those questions so that the impact on the person in front of us is more like permanent for them because that insight came within themselves. So when we ask questions and they have to find their own answers, it's coming from within, that inner wisdom that they have. And we are just facilitating that wisdom to come out or for them to get conscious of it by asking questions and holding the space for them to do that. And when that wisdom comes from within that individual, it's going to have a lasting impact on them, much more so than if we're directing and saying exactly what we see sometimes. Okay. So as a leader, we need to wear different hats at different times. And so for ourselves, our own self-awareness, we need to get consciousness of when are we wearing our hats and why are we wearing them so it's intentional. And we might wear more than one of these hats in one interaction. So if I'm having a coaching session with an employee, I might be wearing the directing hat at times if I'm telling them, I need this to change, or this needs to be increased, or this is the expectation. I might be teaching an idea or a tool or a concept, or I might be mentoring them and asking, where do you want to go in your life, and how can I help you get there, and what's the next thing that interests you to expand, or kind of helping them from a mentorship or coaching, just straight asking questions for their own inner insights to come out. Okay. Things like, well, what was going on for you when that happened? Why was that triggering? Or what was the story in your head that led you to think that about that situation? Right. So coaching is just asking questions to help that inner person's wisdom come out. Now, what we're trying to do is understand the continuum exists as a leader and get intentional. So we do that through a specific type of conversation. It's called an ABC matrix tool that we use. So again, this is a tool that you can get from us. And it's looking at employee behavior through two continuums. Productivity is on the bottom continuum, and the core values of the organization is on the left side, right? It's that vertical continuum. Often in business, we focus a lot on giving feedback to an employee's productivity. Okay, that's easy. Usually we have key performance indicators. We call them KPIs, or we have, goals or metrics of some kind of data that tells us if someone is productive or not, right? And if we don't have that for a role, sometimes it's just subjective. We feel like that overall they get their work done. Okay, so productivity is not about how busy someone is or how many hours they work. It's about how much are they fulfilling the expectations of the standard of the function of the job that they're hired to do. Because as you all know, on this call, I'm sure you can have employees who are very busy. They work a lot of hours, but they don't get a lot of productive work done. They're not actually high on the productive scale. Okay. And conversely, we can have people who, are really high on the productivity scale, and they're not needing to work 40 hours a week, right? In order to get that work done, they don't have to do a lot of overtime. They're able to be pretty efficient and pretty productive. This is not about hours worked, okay, or how busy someone looks or is perceived to be. This is about on the productivity side, how well are they actually getting work done to the function that they were hired to do. The core value side is harder. These are cultural conversations, behavioral conversations, how someone shows up in the team. You know, are they toxic individuals to the culture, or are they very you know, supportive? Do they live the core values of your organization? This is sort of that behavioral side. And often in business, as leaders, it's safer, easier, maybe less anxiety provoking to give productivity feedback to somebody, but it's more anxiety provoking. It's harder. It's a little bit more subjective to really give an employee feedback on that core value side, how they show up in the company, living the core values of the organization. So when we have a tool like this for coaching, it provides a framework for a conversation. And I don't personally necessarily need to give someone, you know, a tool that looks like this with all the boxes and the titles and all the rest. It's really not about titles at all. It's about as easy as drawing, you know, a line vertical and horizontal and explaining that, you know, the horizontal line is going to be our productivity scale. That vertical line is going to be our core value scale. We're doing a little, you know, L-shaped box here, and we're just basically plotting where someone's at and having that conversation. So let's talk about these different types of players before I go into how we use this tool as an example. A players, obvious, high productivity, high core values, okay? So when we're plotting an A player, it's very easy to see, well, what is the intersection between productivity and core values? And wherever that intersection is, we plot one dot. It's always one dot, okay? The intersection of productivity and core values, where is that dot? Now, C players, also very obvious, easy to figure out. Low on the productivity, you know, area, and they're very toxic in the organization. They're clearly our C players. And as leaders, it's also, you know, sometimes easier to give them feedback because we know that we're trying to work them up or work them out of the company because they're toxic. B players are high in core values, right? But maybe they're lower on the productivity scale. And I always ask everyone when I'm doing this training, so if someone is off mute, you know, feel free to answer this question. The rest of you obviously can answer in your mind. Is it easier to help an employee grow on the core value culture side, or is it easier to help them grow on the productivity side?
It's easier with productivity.
Why?
Because core values are what they're like ingrained in, what they have, like what they bring to the table as like a person. And it's really hard to adjust people's thoughts and feelings because they're not natural.
Yeah, 100%, Tiffany. It's like more about character, right? More how they show up from a place of character within the organization. Now, obviously, I mentioned when we started this webinar that my background is in therapy, right? And we obviously in the firm do coaching, executive coaching, right? So we know that growth is there. All of us as leaders work with our employees to help coach them. We know that growth is there. So it's not that someone can't change how they show up in the organization, but they need the feedback because it might be a blind spot for them, right? They might not actually see those behaviors. And so a tool like this gives a context for the conversation, right? Whereas if I just go at someone and say, hey, you know, you were pretty snotty today, they're going to get defensive and they're going to have issues with that. And like, why am I judging them? Okay. But if I can say, hey, you know, one of our core values is to respect the person in front of you. And when you did such and such behavior in our meeting today, it didn't demonstrate that core value. I can relay that, you know, sort of character type feedback, how they impact the culture or the team dynamic through the lens of core value, the company's core value. Because this is not about, you know, any of our personal core values, but every company ideally would have their core values, and they're giving feedback and creating a culture and mentoring through the lens of core values. So when we are actually using our core values of the company in the context of coaching an employee, we are able to do that sort of behavioral side in an easier way than if I'm just trying to get the nerve up to tell someone I didn't like how they showed up in a specific type of situation. Okay, this gives a context and a way to have those more awkward, uncomfortable conversations. Now, we have another category of employee, which is this BC player. High productivity, but low core values. These players are sort of cancerous in our organization because they hide out and they're protected sometimes by organizations because of their high productivity. It's things like, well, that person is really hard to work with, but they're really, good at their job. Or, this person, you don't want this person on your team. They're not really going to be team players on this project. So we sort of keep them over here because they get a lot done. Or classic, for sales, they really are a great salesperson, although, not a lot of people feel like they're team players. Okay. So there's a lot of different types of individuals who can show up in this high productivity, low core value. And some companies allow them to hide out as toxic or allow them to hide out as cancer types of employees, or, those elephants in the room employee that like, well, this person's sort of that unspoken protected individual. We just, don't really kind of deal with it or go there. They're kind of protected by the company in some way. These types of players, if we're coaching them, we have to be able to give them feedback and help them grow on that core value scale. Because if they don't grow on that cultural core value scale and become better, employees from the perspective of growing the company culture that we want to have, then they are really going to be C players, even if they present sometimes as our B players. And sometimes, not all the time, sometimes these types of individuals look really great to leadership and management, right? Because they are so productive, but their peers know who they are. The people that they actually have to work with, they know who they are. And sometimes it takes time where people will eventually talk about how toxic that individual is to work with, or how hard it is to work with them, how reactive that person might be, or whatever. But it takes time for that to come out. But usually at some point, we begin to flush out those high productivity, low core value types of individuals. So the coaching conversation is around giving feedback, okay? Giving feedback and then allowing that person to have self-awareness through our questions that we ask so that they can begin to go either up on the productivity side and or go up on the core value side. So the way that we do this is we would sit down and we would explain to the employee that there's going to be these two continuums, right? We've got the productivity continuum. We explain what that means, not how busy you are, but how well you're getting your work done for the function of the job you were hired to do. Core values. How well are you, like this is the core value side. This looks at the behaviors of our employees within the organization and how well that they're living the core values of our company. And then we're asking the employee to place a dot for the intersection of the core values and the productivity first. Why would I want the employee to put their dot on the page first?
To see what awareness they already have.
Yes, perfect, Tiffany, 100%. To see what awareness they already have. Because if you're a leader, you have power, right? And I don't mean power from a place of I'm a leader, I have power, but your words have power, okay? Your perception can be, can influence people's thinking, okay? You have influence, maybe that's a better way of saying that. So I want the employee to put the dot on the page so that I can see where their mind is at, okay? So that I know what I'm working with here. Okay, because sometimes A players are very critical of themselves. They actually rate themselves lower because they're so hard on themselves. And sometimes my C players are clueless that they're C players. They actually really think that they are a better employee than maybe they really are within their job or within the organization. And they're sort of clueless. They don't have a lot of self-awareness. So they might place themselves really high, right? They think that they're better necessarily than they are. So I want to know, what does my employee think? What's their level of self-awareness? It helps me with the conversation of blind spots or masks. Then I'm going to place the dot that I see for them. Now we can have a gap conversation. When I have their dot, okay, and now they see my perspective, my dot, I now see what the gap is. It's called a gap conversation. And now we can begin to have a dialogue. Maybe I am actually not seeing all of the things that they're doing, right? Or maybe they're not seeing some of the things that I see. So just because they place their dot a certain way doesn't mean that I might not need to change my perspective or my view or my insights about that individual. Okay, it's a two-way conversation here. So when we talk about that, then we can begin to decide, okay, are we on the same page? And maybe I missed something, or maybe they are missing something. Right now I can begin to talk about how we're going to grow and change. Do we need to come up on the productivity side, or do we need to go up on the core value side, and giving examples of what that might look like behaviorally in terms of how they show up as a team member in our company culture. And I'm wanting them to develop those ideas and those actions first, and then I can add to it because I want to see what's within them and their motivation and their interest and their insights of things that they can do to be able to change. So again, we're getting back to coaching questions, things like, well, if you were to come up on the productivity side, let's just say even by 10%, what would that look like for you? What would be different? How would I know it's different? Would we be able to measure that? What are the types of things that you could do, that you could commit to, so that we could come back and see if that's actually happened? Okay, I'm wanting to get their ideas around the change, because then it's from within them and they can buy into it and have more motivation to get those things done. Or on the core value side, it might be coaching questions for self-awareness, like, you know, it seems that I'm getting feedback regarding the fact that you're rolling your eyes a lot in this meeting. So what could you do to maybe get awareness regarding that? How would you know if that behavior is decreasing? I'm wanting them to come up with ideas. You know, maybe it's things like, I want to tell my team that it's an unconscious habit. I want them to give me feedback. Great, let's have that conversation. Or maybe it's things like, you know, asking them, well, what is that about for you? What's going on, you know, when that happens? Well, I'm thinking such and such. Well, is there a reason that you're not sharing that thought and opinion, that is becoming behaviorally like passive aggressive? It's not actually being discussed in the moment. Well, I feel, you know, uncomfortable about it because I don't want such and such to happen. Okay, well, let's talk about that. So when you ask curiosity questions, then it allows for the individual to get clarity about what these different things might be about for them, and then how they might be able to come with ideas to change. Okay, to get more self-awareness. If they're not able to do that to a sufficient level, trust me, I'm adding my own ideas too. Okay, this isn't a one-sided conversation, but whatever the plan is that we agree upon, whatever those action steps are, we're going to set a check-in date so it's concrete. They know that they're going to be held accountable. I know that I'm going to have that conversation with them. And the more that we can make the goals, you know, current state to desired state by when, very, very specific goals, and actionable and measurable, then it allows us to come back and say, okay, this was the goal. You wanted to go from 10% to 20%. How are we doing? Right? Let's talk about it at this time. Start, stop, keep behaviors. This is another idea for these types of conversations. These are things like, we ask the employee, what is something that you can start doing to be more effective in your role? What is something you can stop doing because it's getting in the way of your effectiveness? What is something that you're doing really well that we want you to keep doing? And I don't want you to lose awareness that it's something that's making you successful. So let's get clarity around that so we can keep doing that, right? So start, stop, keep behaviors are also things that can be an interesting exercise for setting goals that are coming out of a coaching conversation. And then we always want to reaffirm support, okay? We are trying to have our employees understand that we are investing in them. We believe in them. We are here for their journey, right? Because as we moved in those different hats leaders wear, when we're in that teaching, that mentoring, that coaching hat spectrum, then we know that the impact on that individual will be longer lasting and more internally understood, and that change is going to come from within versus us telling them something they just have to do. Now, exceptions to this might be if we have expectations and there is like clear attendance expectations, or we don't tolerate certain levels of disrespect, or there's something that's like an absolute no-go in our organization. Well, then in this type of conversation, we might be very direct, set very clear expectations of change, right? Maybe we're writing up a performance improvement plan and it's official, you know, in their HR file. Okay. But when we're having coaching conversations in general, these are what I call shadow file conversations. It's things that we're documenting for ourselves, and we can obviously give our employee a copy of that, but we're documenting for ourselves and it's not a part of their official HR file. Okay. I call those shadow files. Some people have, you know, a physical drawer and they have a folder for each employee and they write notes and they stick it in the folder. Other people, it's all electronic, or, you know, other people might have different ways of doing that. Whatever your system is as a leader, you need to have a shadow file on your employees, whoever reports to you, so that you can keep track of these notes, so that if and when you ever have to actually go into a performance improvement plan, a PIP, then you have the historical documentation to help you and your HR department write something up officially. Okay. But those coaching files are really for you and your employee from the perspective of investing in them, believing in them, helping them to become the best that they can be. Now, here's some quick examples of what it looks like. My employee, they put themselves on the grid. This is where they feel they're maybe at, you know, over here, 65% productivity, and they're at, you know, that 65% core value. So they place themselves over here in this area. And I really see that they're higher than that. I believe that they are, you know, really productive and they are a great employee, and they're an example to other employees regarding the kind of culture that we are trying to grow in our company. And as an A player, they undervalue themselves. They undersee themselves. They're very self-critical. So my gap conversation for that A player, like I mentioned earlier, might actually be towards the upper end, right? I see them as a stronger individual in the team than maybe they see themselves. Or conversely, I might have someone, like I mentioned, who really feels that they're doing a great job on both spectrums, and I'm feeling like they're really a C player, and I'm even needing to get them awareness. I need to bring them some consciousness. They have blind spots around how they're showing up, both on the productivity side and or the core value side, and I see them as a C player, and now we have a gap conversation here. So, like I said earlier, the employee does not need to see all of this, you know, labeling and this gridding and all the rest. This is visually for you, the leader, from a training perspective, all right, on this webinar. I can easily just draw a horizontal and a vertical and just have a general conversation, putting my 100% at the top, you know, and bottom for core values, and my 100% on the right and 0 on the left for productivity, and doing a general conversation with just 2 lines on a page. If I am working, like I used to help coach a construction company, they would just draw it in the sand, literally with a stick. If someone was acting out and they needed to give feedback, they would just draw this in the dirt and have a conversation, a coaching conversation right then and there. This does not need to be this huge, big exercise. This can be a very easy conversation. Okay. All right. People are going to get defensive. So I want to talk about defense mechanisms. Okay. Defense mechanisms. Sometimes they're in denial. Denial means I don't believe what you're telling me is true. Okay. They don't accept the feedback you're giving them. Sometimes they can feel indifference, meaning I hear you, but I really don't give a crap. Okay. I hear you, but whatever. Sometimes they can minimize. They hear you, but they're not going to accept all of what you're sharing. They're going to minimize it and only accept a certain portion of the feedback you're trying to give them. Okay, these are all ways of protecting the ego, right? Protecting themselves emotionally from feedback at times on blind spots. Sometimes they go into justification. A lot of really smart people use this one. Okay, we want to use logic to justify something, to explain something. Okay, so we go into facts and figures and data and logic to kind of explain why such and such happened. Or projection. Projection is similar to justification, but this time I'm going to project it onto somebody else, right? Someone else made me do this. I did it because someone else was doing it. Okay, so they're projecting the feedback onto someone else as a justification for what they're doing. So they're sort of combining that logic side with you know, some sort of other person or some other type of group. Self-pity. Now we can get into the emotional side of defense mechanisms. Some employees will go into things like, you're never happy. I'm always wrong. You're, you know, I can't do anything right. They go into this self-pity mode where they're trying to get you to pull back your feedback, because as a leader, you're thinking, oh crap, like I didn't mean for them to, you know, completely collapse in front of me. I was just trying to give them this little bit of feedback here. I wasn't trying to say that they, you know, are awful as an employee. Okay. So sometimes that self-pity feedback or like pushback from our employees is really powerful because we backpedal as the leader. Okay. We pull back our message. It's a defense mechanism. It works really well. The other one is strong emotions. Sometimes our employees can begin to get, you know, angry, or they might cry. Okay. If that happens again, we sometimes pull back that message and we're like, man, I didn't expect that person, you know, to have this reaction. I must have delivered it wrong. Me as a leader, I must have done something wrong in my delivery to cause that strong emotional reaction. Again, defense mechanism. So when we are having these coaching conversations and having feedback sessions with individuals, we have to be ready to understand that we are going to get hit back with defensiveness. Okay? Because the defensiveness is sort of that victim mindset. Poor me. I don't deserve this. It's not right. Okay? It's not fair. And then they're going to blame somebody else or something else, or sometimes they blame us, right? That it's not right that they're having this experience. And then they might run to a colleague afterwards and complain about the coaching session they just had with us and try to get rescued that, oh, well, you know, that wasn't right. That person shouldn't have said that. It's not really that bad. I never thought that about you, whatever. Like, I'm sure you guys know in the workplace, this idea of a drama triangle, this triangle in the red happens all the time in our interactions. And it can be really powerful during coaching sessions because oftentimes people want to get defensive and feel like it's not right or fair that you're giving them this feedback on their blind spots. Okay. That mask is really important. It gives them a sense of ego protection. And they feel that the feedback is from a place of criticism, condemnation, or judgment. We call it CCJ. Okay. So when I am feeling in any kind of energy of CCJ, I'm usually on one of these seats on this triangle, inside this triangle. And we can ourselves run through these as well. Okay, we could take their pushback and go into victim mode ourselves and be like, well, that wasn't right. I didn't deserve to be attacked, you know, and feel like they were persecuting us for giving the feedback. And then we go and talk to our colleague. Oh my God, I had this session with so-and-so and they did this, you know, and that colleague says, oh my gosh, I know that person is so hard to work with, you know, so sorry you had to have that coaching experience. So we ourselves as leaders can be on this triangle at any given time as well. Okay. So whenever we are in the mindset of criticism, condemnation, and judgment, we are in the red. What we want to do in our coaching hat is we want to stay in the green, coming at it from a place of curiosity. I want the person in front of me, that employee in front of me, to stay curious. All right. I wonder what I'm doing that's causing this feedback. I'm wondering why this person is seeing this. I'm wondering why my colleagues are giving them, you know, kind of like this experience about me. I want them to stay in creator and thriver mode. And I'm doing that by asking them those curiosity questions, not from a place of judgment. I can't give them judgment energy or I'm going to flip them into the red. I have to stay in the place of green myself because I want to make them the creator of the reality around them. I want them to believe in their own power to create that environment that they want to be. Okay. So I can challenge them, but I don't want to persecute them. Okay. I want to challenge them. And I want them to understand that I'm trying to be the coach. I'm trying to give them clarity and ask questions and help them get those own inner insights. So even within the coaching meeting, I could be sitting in multiple of these different green seats at different times of the conversation, right? It's not a one or only seat that we're ever in. So the more as a leader in our coaching conversations, we can keep in the curiosity and the question side from a place of empowerment, not from a place of judgment, the more we can help move our employee through the automatic defensiveness that they are going to feel. Don't judge it. It's going to happen. As human beings, we are wired to protect our ego state. We are wired to have defensiveness. It's self-protection. So expect it and help them move through it. Okay. Help them move through it through questions. I noticed that you're really emotional right now. Do you need some space so that we can come back and finish this conversation? Or I noticed that you're using a lot of things to justify what happened, but I really need you to hear you're a part of that. Okay. So when we stay on it, we don't let them off the hook when they get defensive, then we can move them through that defensiveness and get them into that self-awareness side. Now, we're getting close on time. This is a tool that we use to coach employees. It's called the Manager Coaching Tool. And there's a variety of different boxes on here which hit some of those things that we discussed. Okay. Start, stop, keep is on here. Rating their core values and productivity is on here. Okay. There's a variety of different things. So if you're interested in this tool, we're happy to give it to you and make it available. You can contact us at the end of this. We'll make sure that you have that email. Okay. Now, in terms of profiles, we're not talking about these today, but at Assured Strategy, we actually don't use just behaviors. That's DISC. We actually use the values, what motivates and drives people to do what they do. That's the values index. And we also use the attribute index, how people think and process information unconsciously, what their brain's unconscious talent is and how they see the world. Okay. So we believe in using more than just behavior. And I want to make sure that that's clear because someone's behavior pattern is just part of how they show up in the workplace. But for a 1-hour webinar, there's obviously not time to go into these 3 indexes. Again, we're happy to talk to you about how we used those others as well. Okay, so if you're interested in tools, this is the email, info@assuredstrategy.com. We're happy to give them to you. There's a variety of tools here that we discussed. You can have any of all of those. And then also we will make this webinar available to you and it'll be posted on YouTube and we will send out an email with that. As a company, we offer public workshops. That's on the left. These are some of the workshops coming up. You can find them on our event page on our website. We also do free webinars. We want to be able to help as many leaders as possible with different types of concepts that we have to, master in our leadership journey. And it is a journey. We are never there. Like we are always growing ourselves and gaining self-awareness as a leader. So if you have any interest in any of these upcoming webinars, these are also things that are coming up. So we're at time. I'm happy to stay on for a few more minutes for anyone that would like to ask any questions. We're here to be of support. So does anybody have any pressing question that they would like to ask? And if you can't stay, that's fine. We're happy to have you drop off here. You're welcome, Ashley. Thank you for joining today. All right, Violine, did we have anything that came up? I don't see any questions for us to go over. So looks like we'll end it here. And again, reach out for your tools if you're interested, info@assuredstrategy.com. And again, I'm Kane Petkovich, and it was a pleasure to work with you guys today. Take care. Bye.